Tēnā tātou katoa, ko Rachel Rees, toka wingua, ko rau te koro mātua whakatū. No mā haere mai, welcome to this meeting of joint councils on Tuesday, I think we might be the 22nd of March by now, 2022. So welcome to our hui. We'll start today with karakia, and I'll lead us with tuia. Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waho, tuia te here tangata, ka ronga te pō, ka ronga te ao, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora, welcome.
Kia ora. Kia.
We have good numbers here. I have today, just for apologies, I have one apology from Councillor Noonan. So would somebody...
I have apology for lateness for Tim King.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we'll take the apology from Mayor Tim for lateness, and we will take the apology from Councillor Noonan. Are there any other apologies I need to be aware of? No, in that case, I'll move we accept the apology, seconded by Councillor Edgar. For the purposes of the apologies, I'm happy with just a hand signal, but if it's easier, use your green tick. So we all set, just for accept those apologies. Happy with that? Great. And against, it's carried. Thank you. As we get to the resolutions for the minutes, I will get you just to use the green ticks as we go through. In terms of our agenda today, we have the order of business set out. I'll be following the order of business. The matter in relation to Nelson Airport Limited, the update will be in public business, slightly different from what's on your agenda sheet. If there are matters that are raised in the course of that presentation via questions that the airport representatives believe need to be dealt with in confidential, then they'll signal to me the reason, and we may need to go into confidential, but we'll endeavour to get as much of that presentation in public session. In terms of the interest register, just a reminder, please, to keep your interests up to date and your various registers. No one needs to signal anything to me there. No, that's great, thank you. Then we're any public forum today. I wasn't aware of any public forum. Councillor Neil, oh no, that's a tick, that's okay. Nothing anyone's aware of. All right, that's fine. In that case, we'll move straight on to confirmation of the minutes. Now we've got some minutes from the 2nd of November, so we'll deal with those first. They're on pages 6 through 12 of your agenda. Any corrections to those minutes? No corrections. Would somebody care to move that we receive those as a true and correct record? Thank you, Councillor Courtney, seconded by Councillor McGurk. I now put the motion. If you just signal with the tick or the cross as to whether you're supporting those. Thank you. Excellent. That is anyone against? No, that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next minutes. They are from the meeting of the 8th of March. And you'll find those on pages 13 through 18 of your agenda. Are there any corrections that need to be made to those minutes? No, in that case, I'll have someone care to move those minutes. Councillor Mailing, thank you very much. And do I have a seconder? Take a volunteer. Thank you, Councillor Dowler. Thank you very much. Receive those minutes, so if you do your voting with your ticks again, that would be great. Take mine down, put it back up again. All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. Right, that's our minutes attended to. Now, I think our first presentation today is from Nelson Airport Limited, and Nikki, I'll just get you to remind me. I think we have Mark joining us today, and who else do we have coming in for the Nelson Airport presentation?
Through the chair, my understanding is that Simon Orr and Paul Steer will be.
Oh, okay, Simon and Paul. Thank you. I'll just wait for them to arrive. Kia ora, Simon. Kia ora, Mark. Is Paul joining you as well today? He is. All right, I'll just give him a moment to. Oh, there he is. Hello. Oh, kia ora, Paul. Welcome. It's quite a busy screen, but I found you all. So welcome. Pleased to have you here at our joint committee, and I'll open the floor to you to do your update. So welcome. I've just let the committee know that we'll have this presentation in public, but if there are matters that arise during the course of questions, then I'll leave it for you, one of your team, to signal to me if you think that needs to be addressed in confidential, and we'll move into confidential. Yes, but otherwise we'll be in public. Yes, right. We got the message earlier, and we have taken out some matters of commercial sensitivity, and it was just a slight update there, but that's okay. We can do without them at this particular time. So I'll ask Mark to take you through a presentation that he's prepared. Thank you, Mark. So when you're ready. I'll just make sure you're off mute. No, you're not. Mark, happy for you to commence whenever you're ready. I'll just ask you to, the presentation's up and we can see that.
Yep, so next slide, please. Okay, so just reflecting on the last 6 months at the airport, I guess around people, culture and values, our focus has clearly been on COVID and making sure the well-being of our people and those who share the precinct with the airport have been looked after, and their safety has been paramount. So clearly we need to keep the airport open for business, but people's well-being has been at the top of our priorities. Other work that's going on within the airport is about developing a values statement, so looking at the values of the airport and how we live our values, and also asking our staff how they feel in terms of engagement and what improvements we can make from a people point of view. Our culture is about inclusiveness, so we want to make sure people feel valued. So next slide. Health and safety and risk. So safety on the airport is our top priority. Compliance with CAA and Health and Safety Work Act are not negotiable, and that's what every day starts with, is focusing on that, making sure people are not hurt, making sure that we report every near-miss incident and hazard, so that continuous improvements been undertaken, and managing our risks. You know, we know that we've got erosion challenges, we know we've got flooding challenges, so making sure that the work that we're doing is mitigating those risks and where possible eliminating them. You'll see on the slide there some trends. Trends need to tell you something. What we're seeing in terms of hazards is, because of the introduction of the SMS, we're now seeing a lot more hazards reported, which is good. And the key is making sure that those hazards are removed. And then there's a comparison there between this year and last year in terms of bird strikes, incidents, hazards. So it's a work in progress, but the good thing is we've really focused on this and making some real good improvements. Next slide, please. So projects, so investing in the precinct and making sure it's relevant and resilient is critical. We've got several projects underway. We've got the building of the rental car kiosk in the premium car park due for completion later this year. Security fencing's been undertaken around the perimeter of the airport. We're building a rental car service centre on the airport, and then we've got the new fire appliance due for delivery out of Austria later this year, all all relying on shipping, of course. And then the Hangar 3 and the Old Freight Terminal deconstructions have been completed. So the pics on the right just show where Hangar 3 was, the bottom one, the new fire engine, and the fence construction. Next slide, please. So the numbers, it all comes back to the numbers. Clearly, COVID has had a major impact on our financials this year. Even though we came through Delta and then Omicron came and hit us when we thought we were recovering. Auckland being closed for 3 or 4 months. Auckland's our biggest market, so all that fell through to the revenue numbers. We budgeted on 800,000 packs this year, and at this stage, we're predicting about 550 at best, based on the current trends. So we've had some upsides, so some good work done around increasing the aeronautical charges to the airlines. So the yields improved on the activity, and clearly we've pulled our CapEx spend to reflect the reduced revenues and cash flows. So again, revenue soft. So we're living within our means, is I guess the headline. Next slide, please. Again, just reflecting those numbers. So again, picture tells 1,000 stories. The top left slide, revenue, grey is what we said we we're going to do. Orange is what we did last year, and the reddish line is what we're actually doing. So it's just reaffirming the gap between what we wanted to do and what we are doing at the moment. CapEx, again, we said we're going to spend millions, and we've really tightened our strings on that. The bottom right slide is a good example of passenger activity. So 2019, we were doing 1 million packs per year, and then we've just slid with COVID the last 2 years with the lockdowns. And as I said, this year, target, looking like 550. So nearly half what we're doing 3 years ago. And all that flows through to our bottom line because of our reliance on passenger revenue. Next slide, please. One of the things that we are embracing is the customer experience, so making sure that every time people come through the precinct that the experience is good, and therefore we want them to be proud of what we do here. We've appointed a customer service manager to lead the team in the terminal. We had the celebrations around the 100-year anniversary of the Cook Strait crossing, which was a great event to host. And we're just doing some small, subtle stuff to make the place, more professional and a better experience for our customers. And we're planning to develop a new welcome sign at the entrance to the airport. Next slide, please. So sustainability is the centre of everything we do and think about at the moment. So doing the offset is fine, but we need to be to a place where we are carbon neutral and then carbon positive. So that's where all the energy and thinking is going on. Waste minimisation's been undertaken. We've got a sustainability team on the airport that's engaging with community groups to make sure that everything we do is in alignment with that. And also talking to the airlines, because clearly they're looking at alternative fuels to power the aircraft in the future, hydrogen, electric, biofuels. So we need to make sure that we are positioned to be able to meet their needs in the future. And we know it's uncharted airspace at the moment, but we're working closely with Air New Zealand and Sounds Air about what they're thinking and planning. Next slide, please. So that's looking back. Looking forward, lots to do. Continuing to drive the safety compliance, understanding that our revenue shortfall for the year is going to constrain investment over the next little while, so making sure that that's clearly understood. We've still got ongoing demands around R&M. We deconstructed Hangar 3, now we've got Hangar 2 with the same challenges. So these things are just part of what we have to manage every day. with the pausing of the Nelson plan, we're working on what that means and how we protect the development going forward. If we need to increase the length of the runway because aircraft demand it, then we need to be in a position to do that if and when it's required. Apron redevelopments, currently we're struggling for space for parking and airlines getting gate allocations. We need to build a new rescue fire emergency centre for the new fire appliance. We've got people wanting airside hangar developments. We've got 3 people talking to us at the moment about building them new hangars. So that's all good stuff. Next slide, please. I've engaged with Melanie McGregor and other key community leaders around our relationship and what more the airport can do to, clearly help what others are trying to achieve. We are a strategic asset that needs to be aligned with everything that's going on around us. We've got to mitigate exposure to sea rise and erosion. So those plans are taking traction. Talked about sustainability, carbon neutral. So we've talked about solar farms, and we're getting more engagement from people who are doing that stuff now. So we need to make sure that we are across what's available and what would make sense for us here in Nelson. We've got Airways wanting to transfer ownership of runway lighting and power. So they want us to buy it off them. So we've got to understand what that means. AVSEC's still on the radar. Cabinet's got a paper that they're considering about rolling that out. So we need to understand what that will mean for us and the challenges in the terminal design that we will have to accommodate. And last but not least, the Holdco incorporation. So we've been working hard and positively with the shareholders and the port around getting that incorporation completed for 1 July. So that's a wrap. So questions, please.
Thank you, Mark. I'll open for questions. I just ask the committee members just to use their raised hand. Going to Councillor Laurie and then Councillor Malin, followed by Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mark. The transfer of the runway lights, can you tell us a bit more about that and the costs that might be involved?
Certainly. So it's something that's happening everywhere. So Airways come to the conclusion that those assets should sit with the airport, which has some credence, but like anything, it's only worth what someone will pay for it, and they'll clearly be not first-class assets. So we're entering in negotiation. Our point is that their value is minimal, and we'll do the arm wrestle from there. But yeah, it's just, from our point of view, it's another asset to manage and pay for, and clearly we don't see a lot of value in the current assets because of their stage in life.
Can I just add, Matt? It is somewhat neutral for us, apart from the provision of capital, because the costs associated with the maintenance of those lights, and indeed the capital costs, would be part of the aeronautical charges. It's just a way for another government department to foist things back into the private sector.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like to me, Paul. What about overseas? Is this how things? Is this best practice overseas, or is this something unique to New Zealand?
No, it's New Zealand catching up with the rest of the world.
What a shame. Hey, a couple more questions just quickly, if that's okay. One, actually, it's a bouquet for the bike shelter that I think was installed last year in the car park. It's fantastic. It's a really useful facility, and it really sends a great message. I'm just wondering about EVs. How many chargers have you got at the airport now for your customers?
Clearly not enough. So we've got one in place, but the challenge with the kiosk build is around services. So getting power to points that make sense. So I can assure you it's on our to-do list. but getting power to locations around the car park is the challenge.
So thanks for that. How many chargers have we got there at the moment?
One.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're getting quite a lot of demand for it.
Oh, no, it's like with the cars as well. We've got demand for cars and bikes. It's just getting the services and the location with the pending changes to the car park. We can't do anything until that's in place.
Okay, thank you.
I'll move on to Councillor Mailing.
Thank you for your report, Mark. Just quickly, in health and safety, I saw an increase in bird strikes, and I rang last year because of the number of black swans I was starting to see on the estuary, and in the last 3 days I've seen another 50. Can you tell me, what is it? Are they seagulls, or are swans becoming more of a problem?
It's actually swallows. Swallows are our problem, and they're hard to get rid of. So if there's a positive, they're small, and therefore the risk is low, but that's our challenge at the moment. We're trying a lot of different things. We've invested in a laser that scares them off. We've cut the grass short. We're trying a lot of different things, but swallows are a seasonal thing. That's our challenge at the moment.
Well, you are getting a growth in black swans as well, and they're also a problem at Bells Island, but they're certainly along the estuary, right along your flight path. So that needs to be monitored as well.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mark, for your report. I just wanted to come to health and safety as well. The slide you put up that had the number of airport incidents, it did show a downward trend from 2020 to 2021, but it's not a long period in order to understand a trend. It's still quite a large number. What's the nature of those incidents, and if we were to take a longer horizon, how is that trending over time? Is it something we should be concerned about?
Yeah, your question is very good. So my lens around safety is pretty focused. Incident reporting is critical for me, because we've got to have a culture where everything's reported, and the context, to be fair, in the past that hasn't been the case. So trying to look at those numbers probably isn't a reflection of what's going on. So now we've got our new SMS in place, and we've embraced it with the other PCBUs. What we'll see is an increase in incidents and hazards reported, whereas in the past it wasn't probably coordinated, and it probably wasn't top of mind. So now it is, and now we're reporting everything. And in terms of the type of incidents, we're reporting everything. So whether it's a hazard, it's a trip hazard, so the grass out the front is lifted, that's a trip hazard. That's the sort of stuff we're reporting. The key stuff to worry about is where there's clearly a fatality or someone's safety's at risk, and they're the airside ones where we've had ambulances come onto the airport and not follow the right process to go around an aircraft. They're the ones that concern me the most, and they are minimal and a heavy focus, because that's clearly putting people's lives at risk. Most of the other ones are activity with customers, kids jumping on the baggage belt, people leaving bags behind, people going too fast through the car park. So that's the focus, is those high risk ones have to be investigated. The medium and low need to be followed up, but that's not where our risk is in terms of safety.
Right, maybe if I may, just a supplementary question then. So I'm assuming, Mark, that all of those incidents actually are brought to your attention?
Absolutely. So I can go in right now and tell you what every incident that's been reported, what the follow-up was, and who owns them.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next questions are from Councillor Winsley.
Thank you for that discussion. I was going to ask a similar point because although the incidents are tracking down, if you look at the decreased passenger numbers and decreased flight numbers, they're actually tracking up, aren't they? So, 31 compared with 49, but you've got half the passenger numbers, so that would probably sit around proportionately much higher than previous years. So what you've explained to me is that's a difference in capturing the incidents. So that goes, I'm trying to find your face on the screen to see if you're nodding, that goes some way towards explaining that trend the way I see it, not as a downward trend, but actually as potentially an increase in incidents.
Yes, from my experience, because we've changed reporting methods, then that skews the trends, and the behaviour, to be honest, hasn't been top of mind in the past for whatever reason. I'm not criticising anyone, but my focus is on safety, and we're driving reporting and then making sure that we are doing a deep dive on any high risk incidents, ones that put people's lives at place. And I can assure you, after running the Inter-Island ferries, it's top of mind for me every day.
Thank you. If I can just have another question, you talked about building a new rescue, fire and emergency management centre. So how urgent is that, and how crucial would that be to potential expansion of the airport? And second question around funding, if there's any expectation of shareholder funding in that, and I don't know if we need to go into a committee for that, but those are my questions in relation to that.
Yep. So we do need a new shed for it. The current one's too small. Is it urgent? The new appliance can be accommodated somehow in the old one, but it needs to happen sooner or later, not only because of its inability to fit in there, but also the location. Because if you know that end of the taxiway, we've got issues with the fuel tanks and a kink in the taxiway. So we've got some changes to make there anyway. So we're looking to relocate that emergency centre as part of that change. So I hope that answers your question. So we do need it, but it's not life and death stuff, and we will relocate it.
And we have provided for it in our capital planning, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
Next questions are from Councillor Courtney and then Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Madam Rachel. Mark, thank you for your presentation. You spoke a moment ago about your aspirations in regard to being carbon neutral. I think we'd be interested to know what your target date is for that, please.
So it's either a straight line or a curved line. I mean, we can invest in solar energy tomorrow. That's not unproven investment today, and we've got work's been done on that. So we can create a solar farm tomorrow and basically run the terminal and the precinct off our own power. It's really that investment priorities. So it's clearly a big investment, but we can get there quick, or we can do it slowly and get there. Probably 2030 would be ideally a date that we want to get to, because it lines up with our other sustainability targets. So it's really the ability to fund it and how quickly we want to spend that money.
Fine, but your target, I can rest easy. In fact, you're saying 2030 is your target at this stage.
Yeah, that would be worst case. I'd clearly like to get there earlier. Offsets, as we're seeing in the press, is not popular these days.
Mark, you also mentioned in your presentation about the rental vehicles, the offices, the desks there for customers to pick up and drop off. How's that going as far as timelines go? There's no work started yet, so what's the time frame for that?
So we're aiming for September this year for it to be completed. We're only at the mercy of some of the suppliers. Jib board's part of that, but that's still the date we're aiming for.
Good. All right. Well, thank you.
Can I just go back a point about the carbon neutral strategy? Often you'll have seen publicity around that from other airports. Hawke's Bay Airport, with great fanfare, were putting in the biggest solar farm in the country at one stage. They've struggled, given COVID, to get the cooperative nature that such an investment may require. We'd also be looking at cooperative investment here in Nelson, and Christchurch is also ploughing ahead with a major cooperative venture down there, encompassing all of the council CCOs, plus a couple of outside ones, looking at hydrogen, among other things, and solar.
Oh, thanks for that, Paul. Great.
Thank you. Councillor McGurk is next. Questions?
Thanks. Some of the questions were touched on by some of the other members. Just a couple of ones. Just going back to your projected revenues going forward. I think you're looking at 800,000 per month or 550 per month?
550 for the year. So our budget was 800,000 packs, and what we're forecasting after the ups and downs of Delta and Omicron is 550 for the year.
So Councillor McKirk, that's passengers, and now, of course, from our record, 1,030,000 3 years ago.
Yeah. How long do you expect the recovery to take?
Well, I'm going to budget next year for 750,000, so I think it's going to come back pretty strong. We're looking for a 35% increase from where we are, because what we're hoping, and we've got to keep our fingers crossed, is that eventually we get back to some state of normality, and we're predicting that's going to happen 1 July. But I guess that's a placeholder.
Okay, so I appreciate the future's going to look a bit murky. So you tend to take a more conservative approach to your projected passenger numbers and revenues, or would you call it optimistic?
Yeah, I mean 750. I mean, the shame was this year in July we started off with a hiss and a roar, and it was going to be a great year. So I guess you've just got to believe that if there's no more variants and we get some sort of normality, then activity should get back to those sort of levels.
Okay. Right, the next one is the AVSEC. What thinking or planning have you done in terms of the aviation security moving into the regional airports, including Nelson?
Not a lot, because we've had other distractions, but I mean, we know it's coming and we know what it's going to entail. So there's been designs done, but again, it's a mix of not only the AVSEC but also the types of aircraft that we're going to have to service over time. Because if you have larger aircraft, then the space required to hold people will have to be a lot bigger.
Yeah. Okay. When do you expect any decision from Cabinet? You got any?
They're saying this year.
But they have said that for the last 4 years.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. They've probably got other priorities at the moment. In terms of the emergency centre, you've said that that's sort of not quite a priority. What sort of planning have you done in terms of sort of other uses that might be used for? I'm just thinking that, an on-airport emergency that's perhaps not fire, or shared facilities with other agencies.
That's the thinking. So it's not just a fire station, it's actually an emergency centre. So to that point, if we need to create a centre for another emergency, whatever it could be, that it'll be multi-purpose. It just won't be for the fire engine.
Okay, so you're still in the sort of the thinking and planning stage at this moment.
Yeah, we're lucky because the fire appliance that we're buying has been supplied to multiple airports around New Zealand, and Rotorua and Invercargill have already built centres for them. So we're just going to look at their designs and probably run away with them and use them here. We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, okay.
And we do have multi-agency practice and desktop exercises, so we know the views of the police, the other fire services and ambulance and so on, bring them all together in terms of planning for such a use of the centre.
Right. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thanks, first. Let others have a go.
Thank you. Just before I go to Councillor Turley, who's got the last questions, Mark, I just want to come back just in terms of your projections, budgetary projections around revenue. I just wonder how the aviation sector is factoring in the sort of inflationary pressures that are, we're anticipating now running through for a good period in front of us. Just to sort of contemplating that in the context of, a visitor holiday travel being a discretionary spend, and also just in terms of inflationary pressure on business, the business environment, and whether that's going to be a choke on travel. Is there any sort of broader sector thinking around this one?
Nothing to put my finger on. I mean, we've seen this before with GFC and other fuel rises, where surcharges come along and they get in place, and then they go away, and generally the airlines ratchet up their price accordingly. But I think what we see around travel, and we're all travellers, when you need to travel, corporate travel will continue. They'll just absorb it. Leisure travel, it'll make sure it'll be determined by that mix of price and the attractions at the other end. It's how clever we are to get people here that doesn't become the key decision criteria.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I just suppose that just leaves a bit of a focus for us actually around our destination marketing and making sure that we've got attractive product to bring people here. So I know you're working closely with others on that. So thank you.
Sorry, Rachel, can I just add, we have more outbound tourists than we are inbound tourists traditionally. That's been sort of held back by the natural reluctance and conservatism of the older people in Nelson. Once they get more used to the borders being open and things happening, I think we may see a lift there coming through.
Thanks, Paul. Good points. Councillor Turley, next.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I'm just looking at your program towards becoming carbon neutral, and I'm just looking ahead, that product costs seem to be going up and availability can be quite difficult, and we've got to deal with inflation. It's just, it's similar to what the Mayor Rachel's question was. Have you got any idea of, whether any predictions as to whether the program costs are likely to increase if we wait until the 2030 deadline, or whether it would be better to perhaps work with some of these other airports that are looking at becoming self-sufficient too, and perhaps doing it sooner? And just one comment I'd like to make. So that's my question. One comment. I've had 8 family members fly in between December and March, and they've all been really complimentary about the customer service and experience. So, and you may not get a lot of feedback, but they were really positive and thought the airport building was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I mean, what we know is that, certain investments around solar and everything becoming more proven, and therefore and more competitive, so pricing is going down in those sort of areas. But and then hydrogen generation, those sort of things are still embryonic. I think what I'm hoping is the government's going to drive and reward the right behaviour, and probably cause those who aren't following that lead to pay the price. So we want to position ourselves where we can take advantage of good government policy around rewarding, pursuing that. And, we don't have to lead the pack. There's, as Paul said, it's happening around the country, it's happening offshore. We've just got to take advantage of what works and is cost effective and stay away the stuff that is the wrong answer. So it's interesting. I think everyone's struggling with it, but we've just got to make sure that we're prudent around our choices.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, Mark, Simon, that's the end of the questions that I can see on the screen. I just want to thank you for your presentation today and for your leadership for one of our most significant strategic assets. Really recognise the collaboration that you do with others to make the airport a regional success, and just endorse those comments from Councillor Turley, having been up to Auckland for over the weekend. Always a delight to come out to the airport, and the level of customer service is exceptional. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, committee, we've got next in our presentation order Port Nelson for their strategic update, and Port Nelson representatives are ready, so we'll just bring them into the meeting, and then after we've heard from Port Nelson, we'll take a short break before we go to Tasman Bay's Heritage Trust. I'll just welcome in the representatives. Kia ora, Paul, welcome. Thank you, nice to have you joining us. And I'll just wait for Hugh and Daryl, I think, are joining us as well. I'll just give them a moment to come in. Excellent. So Paul, welcome. I'll let you unmute and then you can introduce your team. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming to meet the joint committee of the both councils.
Is Hugh on?
Yes, he is. He's there.
Is he? Good, I can't see him, but that's okay. Oh, tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, and thanks for having us. I'm sure you've had a busy morning already. It's
no, it's good to see you.
Yep, well, it's Paul Zealand here and Hugh Morrison, and what we'd like to do is I'll give just a few words of introduction. Hugh will then take us through operational performance and strategic focus areas, and then I'll come back with just a few words of summary at the end. And of course, your questions and your insights are really valuable to us, so don't hold back. Operationally, I think at the moment, as you can imagine, we're dominated by COVID at the port, not just and really that's through continuing disruption of the supply chains, and that's not resolving quickly. He'll go through how we're managing that operationally for our own people, and we've been doing an excellent job so far, but we can still see we're really stretched with it at the moment, but managing. So Hugh, if you'd like to take us through, and we'll come back at the end.
Thanks, Paul. Morena, councillors. Robin, I think you're kindly running the slides for us. Thank you very much. Great. And again, Robin, the next slide. Thank you. So the agenda today really very simple. With just a quick look back at the year to date. So that's 8 months of the year. But I understand the title for this presentation was mainly a strategic focus. So then moving on to strategic issues. Thank you, Robin. Next page, please, Robin. Right, just looking at the year to date through 5 lenses, if you like, or 5 stakeholders, and we'll start with people. Picking up Paul's comments about COVID, you've got 3 tables there. 2 on the left are safety related, key incidents as an injury by type, and the one on the right is COVID. So if you look at that COVID data, you can see that we have a rapid PCR system up and running. We've done well over 1,000 as of since February. So that system runs that we test everyone every second day. If you fall out of that second day, for example, you have a weekend or you're on shift, then we rat test you. And you can see our numbers for rat tests are only down at 32. I think at the time we produced this report, that was 32 that we recorded online as we just started that system. But generally, we've done thousands of rat tests, but not recorded up to date. We've had 18 members of the team out through to COVID. I mean, generally, we're finding the rapid PCR is living up to its branding as being highly accurate, where we're testing people, putting them out off work, and it's only 3 or so days later that they do a RAT test that would actually recognise that they've got COVID. So it's a testing structure that we're really happy with. I think the other side of COVID, of course, is the impact on the workforce. Right today, I think we're down 10 workers, 10 staff. That's adding to about 20 vacancies we have. And that's a better number than we've been tracking. We were at 26. But if you add that up, our workforce is 10% down. Sorry, Robin. So, you know, like every business, that whole business continuity issue is squeezing. And we're coming close on a number of vessel exchanges where lower workforces and fatigue issues are really squeezing us in terms of our deliverables. But to date, the port is keeping business as usual. One of the concerns with COVID was that people would be distracted with COVID both at work and at home, and they would lose concentration on some of the safety issues. We've been quite pleased that we haven't seen a spike. Year to date, some of the data's there. We're traveling roundabout same as last year, you know, a few more longer LTIs. Generally, the lost time frequency rate is less than last year. So it's really a similar pattern, but we remain concerned about just how that might happen with people being distracted. Thank you, Rob. So I've moved to customers. The two dashboards in red are our revenue year to date, so revenue tonnes, and our containers year to date. And you can see they're slightly below budget, but roundabout. Now that's for 8 months of the year, so that really reflects it. It's really the back half of the year that you see a surge in apple exports, kiwi fruit, and the start of wine, and that's really where we pick up. But the volumes are down. If you look at the histogram to the right, those two negative columns heading down the page are logs and petroleum. Now logs are a good business for the port, so those been down, impact on the bottom line. Petroleum's down as in part because of the change in New Zealand strategy for oil and petroleum. And there's some offset on the left-hand side. The wine industry has actually rocked on pretty well this year, so in spite of a poor harvest. Timber's gone pretty well, so MDF and sawn timber reflecting construction. And we had a longer apple season last season as people held stock in their cool stores, and that came out. So there was a wee bit of lift there. The real concern is that the last 3 months have seen a dramatic drop in container volumes. So while we're saying container visits are down 5% on last year, and well down on budget, most of that shift happened in the last 3 months. And in February, we had the lowest container numbers we've had move for about 5 years. So I'll talk later about what's happening there. External customers survey, including port users. So we went out and achieved an 88% satisfaction rating, and some good feedback there on a few areas of concern. Thank you, Robin. In the community area, just have a list there of the sponsorships that we are actively sponsoring at the moment. From a funding point of view, the key ones are Nelson Hearing and Nelson Tasman Regional Chamber of Commerce for the export hub. During this period, we've appointed a kaumātua with iwi support, and that's allowed us now to focus on some projects that we're progressing, one being naming of main wharf, looking at Te Ao Māori framework and how that can connect it better with engagement. And we're also using that Kaumātua support onto us in our science and technology project. Nelson Slipway is a key project that we're progressing and managing or working through the cost escalations and a few challenges that are coming our way. Thank you, Rob. Environment, sorry, you won't see that graph. The top one is really just out of interest, is our electricity usage over 4 years. And you can see those spikes are when we're in apple season and we connect up all the reefer towers and we chew through a fair bit of electricity. And then as the season drops off, that demand drops off. So the whole approach to electricity is sort of a medium to longer term approach that we have. The bottom line, again, apologies, it's hard to see, but that's our fuel usage. And you can see that curve is actually angling down. And we've had quite good fuel savings over the last few years, largely due to just awareness of operators. But we're also helped in recent times by the lower container volumes. This year, we've pushed through quite an upgrade of our light vehicle fleet. We've shifted forklifts onto electric. We've taken a slightly different view in terms of asset utilization replacement strategy. We're now looking to hold some of our bigger plant longer by doing more complete refurbishments. And that just extends the life and the creation of another mechanical plant. We're delaying the creation of a mechanical plant. Stormwater, we've put some money into. And from a noise point of view, we've had no significant noise events for the year. Thank you, Rob. On the shareholder side, the money side, those graphs, the solid line is the actual, the aqua line is last year, and the bar is budget. So you can see revenue and expenses are doing both up on budget. The revenue up is with Key Connect, where we're supporting quite a lot of additional cargo movements with an on-charge cost. So it's a great job that Key Connect's out there helping exporters move their product, but most of that goes straight through as a cost as well. So it's on the expenses side. Coming down to the bottom, net profit after tax, we're ahead, 21% ahead of budget. Much of that is due to, we've delayed our capital project program, so depreciation is somewhat down. But importantly, we've been able to defer maintenance dredging as the build-up in silt has been slower than we expected. And the recent surveying we've done of the harbour indicates that we should be able to delay that through to next year. So that's had a benefit of some $700,000 on the bottom line. We have recently paid a dividend to the shareholders of 1.5 million. Thank you, Robin. Right, look, that was a quick rattle through the year to date. And just moving to how we look at the future, excuse me, and just some bullet points here just to talk about some of the things on our mind. So from a people point of view, I think like every business continuity remains a key issue. We feel the next 3 to 4 weeks will be particularly difficult. We're seeing a growing impact of COVID, and that has yet to wash through. So watching that one come through, like every business, I guess, we look at the new COVID variants. And one of the issues for us is how, like the government, how do we come down the other side of our controls? We see the port, because it's exposed as an international border, will continue to operate at quite a high level of protection. And so that's a piece of work for us to find the right balance there. Wellbeing challenges. Generally, I think our teams have got through very well, and the wellbeing is holding up, but that will obviously continue to be under pressure as inflation hits and people feel that they've had enough of COVID, and yet it's still with us. Probably one of the key areas we're focusing on is critical risks. So those are risks where someone could be seriously harmed or a fatality. In the remaining part of the year, we're accelerating our reviews of these risks and just emphasizing that this is where the focus needs to be for the team. And, COVID should be a business as usual at the moment. So if I move to customers and that real concern that we have about container volumes, the drivers for that are largely international and the problems that are coming back into Auckland and as a result into Tauranga. So Auckland is having real productivity issues, largely through just not accessing labour and the impact of COVID up there. And Tauranga is getting jammed up as a result. The inability of these key incoming ports to distribute cargo quickly and then pass them down to the provincial ports is what's causing emissions and smaller exchanges. So I think for the port, we have very little leverage over these issues. Our job is to be a noisy complainant so that they know the pain that they're creating for our exporters particularly. In the medium future, we are seeing some positive moves of a number of companies are looking at increased vessels or increased number of vessels. So that looks promising. And some of the companies, many of those increases we can cope with within the port. One of those companies is looking at a larger vessel that will need us to look at how we expand the harbour channel that we've dredged to cater for that. So we've recently done some dredging, which has just given us more detail on exactly the shape of the harbour and where the tight points are. Ongoing work is happening in digitising our container operations. And we have a real focus in Marlborough at the moment where we're looking to increase our footprint to be closer to the Wineworks, a bottling plant over there, and that will allow a reduction in costs and also improve resilience. Thank you, Rob. In the community space, really, I've alluded to it before, but we're very interested in the Te Ao Māori strategy. And if working with we are developing a 5-year plan about how the port will progress to deeper engagement and awareness. On the environmental side, I just note there the electric trucks are a project that we're currently looking at whether we can actually, on the closed keep connect route, sustain a number of trucks between Nelson and Blenheim. So that project is being worked on, and we're also having a close look at biodiesel as to whether it is practical and economic to push that through a larger plant. On the shareholding side, at this stage, we're holding our forecast and dividend for the year end. We do see pressure on the downside of the forecast, and that's really the issues I've spoken to before. If we can't move these containers or the containers don't come in, and the issue that the community has is that they will look for alternatives, and those alternatives could be trucking down to places like Littleton. So that comes at both an environmental impact, but also it comes at a cost to the port. Somewhat balancing this, we do have the largest number ever of reefer vessels coming in that don't use containers. So I think we're up to 11 or 12 this season. And so that will help retain the volume coming through the port. Science and Technology Precinct has come up to some interesting milestones as our key tenant looks to commit to moving their office forward. And quite a lot of work is going on in Holdco, looking to secure that more beneficial financing structure. So quite a lot of work in all those areas. So Paul, if I hand back to you to sum up.
Thank you, Hugh. That's a great overview. I think just like to assure the the JSC about the directors' focus on critical risks and the safety management of the port. And we've had directors on site engaging with our staff in each of the last 2 weeks to make sure that we are very much engaged and supporting the work that Hugh and his team are doing to keep on top of critical risks. Really concerned, I think, as fatigue sets in and staffing challenges, to make sure the focus remains. I think if I stand back from this, I think what's the board, how does the board think about some of the key strategic risks we're facing? I think a couple of key areas. One of them is how we invest carefully and wisely in resilience, environmental improvement, carbon initiatives, and growth in the face of rising and uncertain costs, which is all around us. So what we knew yesterday isn't what we know for tomorrow. So we're really having to be very, very careful how we spend our money looking forward. And look, Holdco is really important to us in that context. I see interest rates and costs are only going to increase, and if Holdco can help us reduce our borrowing costs and help us face that uncertainty, that would be brilliant. So we fully support the development of the Holdco. And the other thing is we're responding to the key competition for our customers, particularly around Marlborough, but it's not just Marlborough. Some of the challenges of the port movements at the moment means that some things are taken away from the port and going by truck elsewhere. So we're responding to that, and of course our people. So capital investment, competition, and people are the things we focus on strategically.
Thank you, Paul. And
thank you.
We've got some councillors with questions, so I'll open for questions now and go to Councillor Courtney first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Hugh and Paul, for your presentations today. You made a comment, Hugh, in your presentation about delaying capital projects. And of course, my question is that does that impact your plans for decommissioning the Nelson slipway and the 14.6 million that's involved in that project?
Thank you, Councillor. The capital budget to date included nothing for the slipway, as we envisaged that construction cost would come in the new year or in the coming year. So it mainly related to plant, which we managed to push back, and there was the main wharf project also delayed, and so some of that capital impact early on has been deferred.
So nothing, you're saying that there'll be no delays, you're on track, it's still front of mind, the decommissioning of the Nelson slipway. That's going to be done next year, starting 1st of April. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, we always envision that there'll be a long design period, or appropriate design period and consent period. The slipway is very much front of mind at the moment because with increased cost, we're looking at all options because the whole feasibility is under a lot of pressure. So was actually the reason for a board meeting this morning. So it's very much front of mind.
Right. So if I wanted to know more and understand more about the environmental waste treatment facility that's you were talking about to us last year, being built, and if I want to understand more about that, could you develop that for me? Is that also in next year's plan, is it, or is that a long-term one as well?
No, that will be in next year's plan. So we have upgraded the wastewater treatment for Corwell this year. The wastewater treatment for what's known as a small slipway is currently consented. But our plan remains with whatever option we do to upgrade that.
Does it require a new building on the
No, it doesn't require a building. It just requires plant that will be underground.
Oh, I see. It just in your report last year you mentioned to be built, and I just thought, well, that may be something that a new structure. Good, thank you for that.
Next questions are from Councillor Sanson, then Councillor Laurie.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks very much, Hugh and Paul, for your presentation. I'm just reflecting back on the slide you had around energy, and when you were talking about fuel consumption or diesel consumption at the port, I'm assuming that that's direct consumption related to the port's operations, and that it doesn't capture any of the fuel consumed by vessels when they're in port. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. So that's sort of scope 1 emissions are the fuels that we use, and we haven't referred to scope 3 related to our users, if you like.
And those users, do they mostly use diesel or fuel generators when they're in port rather than shore to ship electricity?
Yes, they keep their fuel, they use oil. So the recent change was to use low sulfur oil, but they keep their generators ticking over through oil rather than electricity. Our assessment is we don't have the capacity to connect the ships up to onshore electricity.
And so is the board looking at solar generation to increase that capacity and enable kind of reduction of scope 3 emissions?
Yes, that's one of our medium-term projects, is looking at the expanse we've got on top of our wine sheds, the Patterson Centre, to actually put panels up there, and really just balancing that across, whether we support places where it's more economic to put panels to move to a solar platform. So that's under investigation.
Thanks. Medium term is what, 5 years, 2 years?
Next year, we will push the project, the analysis side of it ahead, the feasibility side, and then the outcome of deliverable will depend on the outcome of that project.
Okay, thanks very much. And then I guess just more broadly, or 2 other questions. One is just really I'm just curious as to how emissions reduction in general is going for the port, so its own emissions. Yeah, so it's a question Councillor Lowry had last year. If you look at our reductions, are actually going very well. And a lot of that, I think, is due to the reduction in shipping volumes. There has been an increased awareness around the port, but if I was honest, I'd say, look, we're not tracking as well as we wanted to do, and we're just having a refresh of and more detail put into our environmental strategies, so we've got clearer visibility on that. So it's an area of work that we're not entirely happy with at the moment, but one of the upsides of COVID is our emissions are actually quite low at the moment. Relatively. Okay, thanks. And then just final question is on the science technology precinct. You mentioned that a key milestone is approaching. Are you able to give us any more information about how that project's tracking? And
look, the project from a design point of view is tracking well. There's a good master plan out that's got wide support. Our discussions with a key tenant are well progressed, and they're enthusiastic to move faster than they originally indicated. The issue that both ourselves and the tenant face is cost. So we've just completed the concept estimate. The cost numbers are not surprisingly up. So it's really just working with the tenant to correlate, what's an affordable rental, and then together, how do we manage the design scope to actually come up with the right balance between rental and capital cost. So we're in the midst of those. It's going to be difficult as for any development at the moment, but both parties are positive we can work our way through it.
And what kind of, if you're able to, I understand if not, but the increase in, I'm assuming it's an increase on the projected costs. What kind of percentage are you looking at?
I actually haven't, because they've been cut in so many different ways, I've actually lost track of the macro picture. We had 65 million as 60 million rather as our estimate for the total project, and I haven't seen the total project number updated. So sorry, I can't answer that one.
Okay, maybe that's something that could be circulated at a later date to elected members who are interested. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I'll move on to Councillor Laurie and then Councillor Bryant. Councillor Downer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Hugh. Just picking up on the science and tech precinct subject, is there any chance that the slowdown at the port is going to negatively impact on that project?
No, I see them as quite disconnected. We'd say slow down, you're talking about the volume movements through the port. No, it's really quite a different business proposition. So on the science side, we're appealing to people like Cawthron and people who connect with them and technology people. And really, they're not strongly connected to the throughput of the port. So no, I don't see a connection there.
Good news. And when you talk about this potential tenant or client that you were talking about earlier, is that an organisation in addition to Cawthron?
No, that is Cawthron.
Okay, right. Thought so. Thanks. And big picture, who is driving this project, Hugh? Is it Port Nelson or is it Cawthron, or do you have some sort of organisation that's spearheading it together?
Port Nelson is driving the development. Cawthron has two key roles in it. Firstly, they're likely to be our major tenant for the office component, so they're very influential and their support's critical. Secondly, of course, they're looking at a laboratory on land that we're selling them next door, and so their support for that development, which sits alongside the office development, if you like, is key as well. But the leadership, if you like, for the development happening sits with Port Nelson.
Great. And through the chair, are there any other organisations in the frame already, apart from yourselves and Cawthron?
From a tenancy point of view, or
yeah,
there's no one. There are conversations happening, but there's none that I would put forward as saying that we have tenants in waiting.
Okay. Is that something are you going out looking for these potential tenants at the moment, or are you waiting till you've reached a certain stage before you do that?
Primarily, we're waiting till we reach a certain stage and we've actually got material to show, primarily being the master plan. And some of these major milestones are actually at the end of this month and early May. Cawthron's commitment, I think, will be one of those key pieces of collateral that we'll want to share. So that time frame is important in that regard. Having said that, NRDA has done some really great work at connecting with NZTE and beginning to profile this opportunity to overseas customers or companies. And there's also good discussion happening nationally about where this might fit in with allied research institutions.
That is great news. I think it's one of the most exciting things out there by a mile. And I know we live in uncertain times, but when are you hoping to see it actually become a reality?
It depends what you call a reality. Certainly with Cawthron, my hope is that we're breaking ground in a year and a half's time, a year and a half to 2 years. I think completing the whole development to its full extent is a long-term project, and just really crystal ball gazing. Look, I think that's a 10-year type journey.
Right, but the vision is still 1,000 knowledge workers at that site?
Correct.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
On to Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you and Paul for the presentation. Just in relation to the drop in volumes, how much is that related to the log industry and logs going over the wharf?
Look, I think it's evenly split between logs, petroleum. They would be the two dominant areas. So, sorry to double back. Your logs are a significant part of that reduction in current volume. that they don't explain the full drop in some of our expected profitability out of containers, but they explain the volume, the major part of the total cargo volume drop.
Thank you. And just in relation, like we're coming into the fruit season and you'd expect to see some fruit going out in containers over the next few months, will that help increase that level?
Yes, we're sitting here at the moment with, in terms of empty reefers, below where we'd want to be. I think what the industry is looking at is they will use reefer vessels early in the season to move product, and then look to containers at the back end of the season. So on that basis, I expect our container numbers to be below budget early on, and then hopefully we'll pick up and see them come through towards the end of the season. Unfortunately, there remains uncertainty around the container volumes, but the positive is we know the shipping lines are favouring reefers over dry boxes. So we should see good support for the apple or kiwi fruit industry and seafood, but it could come at the cost of people who are moving timber, who might struggle to get as many slots as they would like.
Thank you. Thanks for that answers. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant. Councillor Della is the last questions, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. Yeah, it is sort of a question at the finish, but I'm on the executive of a New Zealand-wide organisation. It's only a small organisation, but the other day we received a little bit of information. I'll read it out, take a couple of seconds. It reads, if you want a genuine, clean and 100% green alternative for fossil fuels, look no further than liquid ammonia, a real alternative for both petrol and diesel and totally carbon neutral. Requires less than $1,000 modification to existing petrol engines to use. Has also had extreme successful testing in heavy marine trials. The port at Dubai have just taken delivery of a new multi-million-dollar ocean tug that features a mega horsepower clean ammonia engine, and they've also fitted filling stations for cars. The new technology means it can be produced economically and cleanly. If you've never heard of anything about this before, it's hardly surprising as no oil company is involved yet, although very little modifications are required to use existing petrol engines. So I just thought I'd read that out because it's actually, us as a small organisation, we're going to get no traction at all. We do meet with the Minister once a year, but if the ports got together and did some research and thought this was a good thing, because you could no doubt run your forklifts on it, you could run anything diesel on it by the looks of it. And of course, there are ships around the world now that are on ammonia. This is about a month and a half old, but there's more come on board as the ammonia is becoming available. So I just thought I'd raise that just to let you know what information I've received in the last couple of days, and hopefully you might think about it for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll leave that there for some consideration. Not necessary question for today. Paul and Hugh, thank you very much for coming in today. Lots of questions, lots of interest. Pretty dynamic environment at the moment, but also plenty of opportunity for both Port Nelson and the region. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, I'm now going to suggest we take a 10-minute break just to stretch your legs, and then we'll resume just after 11 o'clock, and we'll have Tasman Bay's Heritage Trust here to do their strategic presentation. So let's take a break and invite you to turn your video and microphone off, and we'll see you in about 10 minutes. We'll get underway in a few moments. We'll just wait for a few more members of the committee to come back. I'm happy for Lucinda to now join us, Robin. She's available. Wait a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Kia ora, Lucinda. I'm just waiting. We've just had a little break and I'm just waiting for councillors to come back to the meeting. I think we're just about all here and we'll get underway. All right, I think we're fine to go. So kia ora, Lucinda, welcome. Thank you for joining us today to present your strategic update for Tasman Bay's Heritage Trust.
Kia ora and thank you for the opportunity. Olivia, our chair, will be joining us directly, but until she does, I will just start with the presentation and work through that. Thank you. So next slide, please. Right, top of mind obviously will be the Archives Research and Collection Facility project, which of course is our top strategic goal of this period that I am reporting on and also the coming financial years. So just to update you on progress, the ARC project, as it's known for short, is a working title. The project steering group consists of Derek Shaw, Brendan Silcock as our co-chairs, Olivia Hall, an ex officio member, and external advisors John Hambleton and Ian McLennan, who worked very closely on the Suter rebuild and who will be are offering us some very key advice during this period. We've also appointed a new internal staff member, Belinda Wheatley, who's a highly experienced project manager who's come to us from the health sector, who's adding skills to staff to enable us to really deliver this project and really focus formally on that. We also have a fundraising working group consisting of Emma Thompson, who is chairing that, Olivia Hall, and our new trustee will be joining that when that person is appointed. Belinda and myself are also on it. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this outlines the site where the project is going to be built. So we have been quite busy working behind the scenes on this project. We have commissioned, we worked with Aeschylus Project Management to deliver site and geotechnical surveys and to develop a new project plan. So this was in the past 6 months. Both of those were satisfactory. So the geotech was satisfactory and no issues were revealed, which was very good to hear. The project plan is underway. The next phase is site master plan, concept design, develop design, preparation of detailed design, and finally procurement before there is a stop point on the project plan, if needed. Now, we went out to market for that. We went out to 6 companies who are based in both Nelson and nationally for comparative purposes. And the archive group recommended to the board that Cameron Gibson Wells be appointed to project manage the next stage. So we are working with them to oversee this project. So we are looking at having a completion date for concept design around September this year, and I know some of the councillors will be interested in seeing some new design drawings, and they should be available at that point. Next slide, please. So we've had a bit of a year of 2 halves, I suppose, in terms of visitation. We had strong visitation reflected in our 6-monthly report up to 31st of December. We're above target. And we had our busiest July for 5 years. including a second highest visitation day ever, which was 966 visitors on the 28th of December. And so the Dinosaurs exhibition has been proving very popular. However, as we know, Omicron is spread in the community, and there has been a lot of concern this year, seeing a drop in visitation and lowest January and February numbers for 5 years, and those are comparable to what we would normally be seeing in late winter. So there's a lack of domestic tourism, people are really hunkering down, and we had a record low visitation on 20 visits on 3rd of March. Next slide, please. So just to refresh on what we have been doing exhibition-wise, these were in our first quarter, so proved very popular with, as I mentioned, our highest visitation day for a long time. Our partnership with Cawthron, Our Science, Our Future, 100 Years of Cawthron. National Geographic's Rarely Seen Photographs of the Extraordinary. The Anne Frank exhibition, Let Me Be Myself, which was sadly cut short because of the Delta lockdown that we went into last year. And we've also begun to refresh the regional gallery and installed a new research hub in that space for people to be able to access their collections online. We also had light at the end of the tunnel, an expression of hope for youth, from youth, because of the Delta lockdown that moved to online exhibition. Our Place, Our Climate, Our World through the eye of the lens Whakatū, in collaboration with Track Zero and the Nelson Arts Festival, and Our Climate, Our Future Ministry for the Environment touring exhibition, which was shown at the same time. On now, our Dinosaur Revolution, and that is entering its final week. It has been extremely popular and we've had very high family revisitation. 96% visitor satisfaction, and it's been also very pleasing to offer it 2 low sensory hours a week, which has been particularly popular for parents with young children who are a bit alarmed when the dinosaurs are making their full animatronic range of sounds. So that having those quiet hours, and it's also very good for our visitors who may have some issues with sensory processing. So that's an initiative that we want to see continue. We've also had drop-in activities over the school holidays and some booked school holiday art activities as well, which have been very popular. We had planned to have a lecture series over summer. Because of the COVID situation, we only delivered one of those, but it was extremely popular and sold out under our COVID limitations. Dinosaurs That Once Called Nelson Home by Dr. Greg Brown. Next slide, please. So coming up, as I said, Dinosaurs is about to finish. We're then going to install the Ablaze, the 2019 Tasman Fires exhibition, which has been out touring in the community. So this is the first time that we've actually had it in the museum itself. After that, we have Meltdown Visualising Climate Change, which is on tour from Europe. So we're very excited to have that very important exhibition on the subject of climate change and sustainability. And we'll also have a small touring exhibition from Te Papa, Colossal Squid Freak Features, which will be really popular for the education audience. Next slide. Thank you. So this is just some of the feedback that we've had. Incredible, more exhibitions like this, please. Such a great day out for my 3.5-year-old nephew. Always a great experience. The staff here make the experience a million times better. And wonderful museum. Right, the regional collection is of course a key focus for us, and a major exercise this year has been the revaluation of the collection, which involved the staff accessing a lot of objects. That was a process that took a couple of months, and the valuation has come out at 20 million by Dunbar Sloan. Staff have also been busy uploading objects, records to collections online, and we now have over 160,000 objects browsable in the community. We have a change in collecting focus each year in terms of contemporary collecting. This year we've been focusing on hospitality businesses, particularly food carts, menus, and those set up by refugees communities as well. And some of our key acquisitions in this period has been a very special jar of Pix peanut butter, only one of 4 that have been grown in New Zealand. So New Zealand peanuts, very pleased to have that in the collection. An original 1843 auction flyer for land in Cambria Street, and the World War I medal set of Maria Hull, who was famously known as the Angel of Antwerp, a very significant figure. Next slide, please. In terms of taonga Māori, we have also been very busy. We've Kaitiaki Taonga Hamawera Rob collaborated with the Suta Art Gallery for their Hauraranga Kōrero exhibition, and we supported them with many hours of work in that regard. We took the 2 puna portraits from the photographic collection to Te Awhina Marae to share with iwi. There, we've been doing taonga puro talks at Richmond Library, discussing taonga tuturu, which are taonga who are lodged with the museum while the ownership is established through the courts, and of which we are temporary kaitiaki. And so that talk happened in Nimit. We've been working very strongly in terms of delivering local history programs through our education program, and also been working on bilingual interpretation for the Brookwai Marama Sanctuary display, which is going on, being installed very shortly into our regional gallery, which will be a semi-permanent feature for us. Next slide, please. In terms of education numbers, 95% teacher satisfaction, which is very pleasing, and we exceeded the Ministry of Education target for the 2021 calendar year. As you'll be aware, that funding stream has now closed, and the museum spent a lot of time in preparing our application for the new enriching experiences funding to teach Aotearoa New Zealand histories. And we had been hoping to hear the result of that funding in March. It looks like that's been delayed because of COVID. So it's possibly going to be April before we are able to do that. And the education team at the museum do teach a lot of different programs. Ngā iwi o Te Tauihu, Māori instruments, discovering whakatū. Here's a photo of our educator Kelly O'Leary on their art walk. So we've been doing a lot of programs outside the museum in the last period during COVID, as well as dinosaurs inside, but a lot of taking children outside to experience Nelson. Next slide, please. In terms of supporting cultural organisations in Te Tauihu, we have been getting out and doing a lot of work, both in the community when that has, COVID has allowed, and also digitally. So we've been giving assistance to Murchison Museum, Golden Bay Museum, the Nimit Teaching Program, helping Nelson College with their digitisation of their archive. Most recently, I've been assisting Motueka Museum in terms of supporting them with policy development. And we were out at Motueka Library on Friday installing art prior to their opening. So we do get around in the community a lot. We're also organising regional hui for all the museums of Te Tauihu to get together and discuss current issues. Next slide. In terms of our sustainability goal, we have an SOI goal to undertake and implement an MSOL audit and energy management plan by the end of this financial year. So we received that final report on the 17th of March, and we are just working through those recommendations currently, and we will be discussing that at the board meeting on next week on the 30th. But work has already been going on, and so some of those recommendations have already been implemented, including installing 2 CO2 sensors in the galleries and upgrading the building management system, which we hope will result in some energy savings. Next slide, please. We've had a couple of retirements of very long-serving staff members and trustee this year. So I would very much like to acknowledge Trustee Chris Bowater, who has been with the Tasman Bays Heritage Trust since 2009. Chris's last meeting will be next week in March. So a very fond farewell to Chris, and thank you to him for his service. We also said farewell to two long-standing staff members, Nikki Green and Errol Shaw, who both retired after long service, both since 2007. Just to update you on our museum shop, we've had good performance in the first 6 months with income up above our COVID forecast, and we're also stocking Te Papa product in the shop now, which is very pleasing. We're looking to develop that relationship further. Obviously, there have been disruptions in stock supply in the last quarter, which have had a bit of an unfortunate impact on our ability to get some dinosaur merchandise in, and we have accordingly seen a drop in retail sales in the third quarter with the drop in visitation. We do want to acknowledge the grants and funding that we have received this year, and a thank you to Tasman District Council and Nelson City Councils, obviously, for your ongoing operational funding and support. We also acknowledge 15,000 from National Services Te Pairangi towards security, peace management and air conditioning repairs, Ngā Kahu National Repatriation Partnership for funds towards supporting the kōiwi tangata, the human remains that we still are caring for on site while iwi deliberate on where their final destination is, and thank you to the Lions Foundation for contributing towards a new AED defibrillator that we have behind our front desk. We have a couple of grant applications in, as noted earlier, to the Ministry of Education Enriching Local Curriculum Fund, so we hope to hear about that outcome in the next month. And we're really hoping that that will enable us to expand our education services, as we are really very well placed to really deliver those local stories in the Aotearoa New Zealand curriculum in partnership with iwi. And we have also put in an expression of interest to Lottery's significant project fund for financial support for the ARC building. We can't put in the final funding application to that round until we receive resource consent, and so that will push that application into next year. But we have certainly lodged the EOI to engage them in that journey and conversation. Next slide, please. So financially, 6 months to December 21, we generated a modest surplus after an increased depreciation charge on the land and buildings from revaluations in June 21. And we are currently on target to meet our budget. There are increased running costs due to inflationary price rises coming our way, including significant power increases, which look to be in the range of around $10,000 annually. And we're also facing an increased audit charge this year of around $42,000, which we are working through with Audit New Zealand currently. Going forward, there'll be a strong focus on ARC funding and project costs and budget management around that. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to introduce you to the statement of intent for the next financial year coming up. It's very much a steady as she goes focus, and because our key strategic focus remains the ARC facility. So that's really our key goal, to ensure that happens, and in order to do that, we're pulling back on some of the other activities that the Trust is doing to enable our staff to fully concentrate on that. Next slide, please. First key goal, to plan for and progress a capital works project that will safely and appropriately house the Nelson Tasman Regional Heritage Collection. We are very grateful to Nelson City Council and Tasman District Council for your commitments and the long-term plans. Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, project phases that we expect to have complete by June 2023 are the site master plan and concept design, including iwi and council consultations and our developed design process. And our target is 50% of non-council funding to be secured by June 23, which is when we estimate that we will be launching the fundraising campaign publicly. Next slide, please. Second goal, to be a highly valued visitor destination, educational provider and venue for cultural and community connection. So we're hoping to achieve target visitation of at least 50,000. That target was based on information from NRDA on visitor projections, It is a little bit of a guesstimate, as the next year is very much an unknown still, but we expect to be able to deliver around that number of visitations. We are hoping to expand our educational reach on the assumption that the Ministry of Education funding is successful, and we'll have an increased target of 6,000 education visits in that case. We're aiming to implement a Te Reo Māori language policy in terms of all our exhibitions, and we are planning to work on a summer exhibition which will highlight the treasures of the regional collection and really share those with the people of Nelson Tasman. Next slide, please. The third goal, to actively support and collaborate with iwi and Nelson Tasman cultural heritage organisations, providing 50 hours of professional support, organise at least 2 museum hui, and collaborate with at least 1 Nelson Tasman cultural organisation. Next slide, please. To continue to develop and care for a strong collection which is relevant and accessible to and valued by our Nelson Tasman communities. We'll be implementing the first phase of the collection relocation plan and really concentrating on getting the collection ready to move. Upgrading our collections online platform with increased searchability, and to having a collecting focus of at least 2 contemporary objects or taonga, with a focus this coming year on the LGBTQIA+ rainbow community. And finally, a sustainability goal to improve our sustainability performance, to implement at least one further initiative identified in the MSOL Energy Report, and implement at least 1 new staff-driven initiative. Next slide, please. That's the end of our presentation. We open to questions. Thank you.
Kia ora, Lucinda. Thank you for a very comprehensive presentation. Tēnā koe, Olivia. Welcome. You've been incredibly busy, as always, and a huge amount of strategic thinking and planning for the future. So I always enjoy your presentations, and just want to acknowledge the service of Chris and Nikki and Errol. You know, what 3 amazing people that have given so much service to their community, and just energy and passion for what they've been doing. So big shoes to fill there from all 3. Kia ora. I'll open for questions, and I have Councillor Courtney first with questions today.
Thank you, Mayor Rachel. Lucinda, thank you very much for a most interesting report. I have to draw attention to the comment you made, and I hope I didn't hear it correctly, but I think I did. 10,000 increase in electricity.
Yes.
Now, Lucinda, does the Trust plan to undertake an energy management review of some with some urgency?
Yes, absolutely. So we have been looking at, we went out to alternative providers to get comparable quotes. Meridian came out still as being the most cost-effective provider, and it seems to be, those increases seem to be happening across the sector. And also with our MSOL energy audit, we are really looking at identifying all the ways that we can reduce our energy expenditure.
Thank you for that. I'm pleased to hear what you're telling me, although some are going out for tender throughout the country, business and such like, and getting significantly reduced costings, but you're happy with what you've received there. Can I just ask about your carbon footprint? Have you had a chance to, and did the energy audit throw up anything that would help you with that?
The audit has identified a number of things that we can do. One of the larger things with our carbon footprint is the air conditioning and the electricity cost of that. So possibly one of the best things that we can do is to look to make the new art facility green. And we are investigating whether we can, whether solar powering is going to be an option for that.
And I'm not going to apologise for coming back to the audit, but was there a standout recommendation from the audit that sort of said, well, there are significant savings for the Trust in this particular area? Was there a standout that you think you could action?
We've actioned some of the items already. There isn't anything in terms of the low-hanging fruit of something that would be easy to implement. There's nothing additional that we could do there. We are working through them, but there's no silver bullet in there, unfortunately, that we can action.
Replacing plant and that sort of thing. That is cost a factor in what you can do?
We have got a capital works schedule built up for the next 10 years of what how we're going to be investing in plant and upgrading plant and facilities.
That would help towards energy savings. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Moving on to Councillor Winsley.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. I just have one question and one comment, actually. So the low visitor numbers you said, but you didn't give visitor numbers to the website. You've got 160,000 browsable objects and you said 50,000 target visitors. I presume that's feet in the door. What is your prediction for website and online visitors? Because, you know, I'm a little bit concerned because with the COVID lockdowns, I understand you haven't had the people coming, but people have been sitting at home, kids have been trying to learn. I would have expected an uptake in online visits. So just clarify around that, please.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's a really good question, and I'm sorry I don't have the figures to hand for visitor numbers. We have been really working to have digital kete available on our education site, and we have also been trying to increase the amount of online exhibitions that we have. I can come back to you with an update on digital visitor numbers, though. With our visitor numbers, we are only counting physical visitors who come in our door at either here or at ISIL or attend one of our outreach topics in the community. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, I think it is a missed opportunity, and it runs into what I'm going to say, and that's two things. I'm very pleased to hear you're implementing a Te Reo Māori language policy, and I know you've done a lot to bring Indigenous Māori perspectives and taonga and culture into your exhibit space, but when I look at your Facebook profile, I still have ongoing concerns, which I raised at the previous meeting around the image we are projecting. And I think that we need to be very careful as joint shareholders that we aren't supporting an organisation that just seems to promote white middle class cultural heritage. And I have to say that quite strongly. When I look through 21st of February, you've got a social media post, these two take the cake for the cutest. It's two little European Pākehā girls with white pinafores and black patent leather shoes holding dolls and rocking horses. You know, Happy New Year, white middle class European family, Cheese Lovers Day, all white middle class, mostly males, multiples, Awareness Day, two similar little girls. You know, I understand that you have to, Valentine's Day again, you know, it's like there's an invisible component that you're just not touching in your social media. And I personally think social media is very, very important. And that is how a lot of youth engage with you. And so I just have concerns. And I think if you increasingly draw your social media images from your Tairi collections, you are going to find you're running down that rabbit hole, which you have run down in bias in the image that you're presenting. And I just feel, this is my comment, I totally acknowledge you're doing amazing things in your exhibit space and your collaboration with Suta and, you know, Te Awhina Marae. I understand that, but let's make sure you step into that social media space because, you know, we need to send the image that all our heritage is important, not just that heritage collection that you've got in your photos. So can I just leave that there? I did raise it at a previous meeting and I've just been slowly watching your Facebook page and it's getting increasingly concerning to me, actually.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments and very much note those and take them on board. I guess one thing I would note is that we're very cautious around using some of the iwi images from our collections because it's very important for us that we have the correct family permissions before we do that. So that could lead us down, I suppose, as you've identified, the rabbit hole. So that's something that we'll very much take on board and have conversations about.
And having a te reo policy, maybe you can incorporate some te reo in your posts as well. It'd be wonderful to see. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Councillor Wensley. I'll move on to Councillor Sansom and then Councillor Tufnell.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Mayor Rachel, and kia ora, Olivia and Lucinda. I'd like to say tautoko to Dana. I've just had a quick scan through of the Facebook page, and it looks like there's only kind of colonial history and dinosaurs featured. So it was an observation I hadn't made. But I wanted to, Lucinda, touch on the initiative of the museum to embrace the Aotearoa New Zealand histories. It's really wonderful to hear that. And I did wonder whether you'd ever considered, if you're developing, in particular, kind of the local histories, whether you'd actually considered going out into schools with that, because all of the schools are going to be, I think, scrambling to try to cover off this part of the curriculum, whilst already, at capacity with all the other, areas that they need to attend to. And if the museum was able to kind of develop some opportunities to actually reach outside, not just out of the classroom, but out of the museum into schools, you might be able to kind of leverage the resources that you're developing and the staff who are focusing on this, and then obviously also bring the students back into the museum as well. It's just wondered if you'd considered that at all.
Yes, we have been looking at what we can do to support teachers in terms of supporting their knowledge. And one thing is that the curriculum has been rolled out to next calendar year, which does give a little bit more time to be able to do that. And we've had some initial talks with Hilary Mitchell around providing some information for teachers, and we'll be working with iwi as well to ensure that all those stories are told from iwi perspectives.
Thanks. And I can imagine that could also then flow into additional resourcing on the website, and potentially trying to draw in a broader audience. Like it's something I'd be really interested in reading about as well, or sharing with my son. Unfortunately, he's kind of leaving school in another year and is going to kind of miss out on this the Aotearoa Histories curriculum, which is really unfortunate that we've got another generation who've missed that. But thanks very much.
I just want to add to that we're doing a lot of that teaching already in terms of the iwi programs that we run in the regional gallery. So we have been running those programs for a good couple of years now as well. So it's what we're doing is really building on that foundation that we have.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Thanks.
On to Councillor Tufnell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rachel. A great, excellent report, and I just want to compliment Lucinda and the staff. Anne and I tend to get to all of the exhibitions, and the presentation in the exhibitions and the staff communication I found was excellent. And so just take that as a big tick from Trev.
Thanks, Trev. Kia ora, there's no more questions. Olivia, I just want to come across to you and say, look, it's been an incredible last couple of years to try and navigate through this strange environment we've been operating in, but also just want to acknowledge the significant project that you've got in front of you with the ARC. Lucinda covered off in the slides the sort of funding sources. So I just want to ask you maybe for some comment around your thoughts about accessing additional sources of funding, and any support that as shareholders or as both councils we could provide in that endeavour.
Kia ora, thank you. Tēnā koutou. Obviously, Lucinda's a pretty well-oiled machine at presenting, so happy just to provide any support here. Regarding the fundraising, we have a project manager in place that's helping sort of schedule all of our fundraising, including our approach to central government, which is definitely in train. I think we will particularly need to have our local government support for our central government approaches. So that will be something that we are engaging with councils on in particular. We are going to then go to some of the large funders, and last, near the end, will be going out to our communities, and that will also be a way to engage and draw interest in the project with our communities. But we will be a bit further down the track on what it might look like, etc., by the time we go out generally to our community, seeking also their funds.
Laura, thank you for that update. If there's no other questions, I think we're all finished on questions. Thank you both very much for joining our hui today. And again, thank you for the mahi and the leadership on this very, very important part of our cultural identity. So thank you so much. Now, joint committee, I think if I go to my run sheet, that concludes our open agenda. Make sure I've covered everything off. We've got to go briefly into confidential session. We've got a paper in there. I think they're just minutes that we're receiving today and confirming minutes, aren't they, Robin? So it's quite brief. So I will be happy to move into confidential. I shall so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mailing. I will put the motion, invite you all to use the reaction tick. Thank you.
Through the chair, may I have a couple of minutes to transition, please?
Absolutely, Robin. And I'll just also, if you could just indicate, take your tick down now, so that is carried. But can I also just ask you to then re-tick to indicate that you're in a place where you cannot be overheard or overlooked, just so that I can make that record. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Robin will let us know when she's ready.